What's up, everybody? A Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on the Space Reverse Engineers series. This episode is going to be a little bit different than our previous episodes, mainly because of the 200th episode of the Space Engineers Inspiration series, which led to a little bit of a hiccup in the typical schedule that I usually have. So I hope you guys can bear with me, but this episode we are actually working on this guy, which is the RCSP Phoenix. It's an assault carrier, if my memory serves, but again, check the link in the description and all that kind of stuff for the details. But yeah, it's the interesting part about this one is that we normally show the build in the inspiration episode, and then you guys vote on which ones you want to see reverse engineered. And because I didn't really do like a typical walkthrough showcase of these builds from the last one, it kind of threw a monkey wrench into things. So this time we're going to just kind of go at it cold turkey a little bit and see what we can come up with. So yeah, the next couple episodes might take a little bit of time to iron it out back to the way things usually go, because there's going to be a little bit of a hiccup in the standard way the Inspiration series works for an episode or two. So I hope you guys can bear with me. What I'll probably do is at the end of the episode, I'll show a couple of builds I would have normally picked for Inspiration this week and let you guys pick from that one. And so the poll will be in this episode as opposed to the Inspiration one on Thursday. So bear that in mind, and let's dive in. Okay, so like I said before, this is an assault cruiser, so obviously it has a lot of weapons and things like that, but as opposed to the way I would normally tackle the inspiration stuff, we're just going to dive right into the way that it's actually built and such. It does strike me as having a bit of that industrial / realism to it, which is pretty cool. And I say that mainly because of the wrong hotbar that I'm using. There we go. I say that mainly because of the armor plating type designs, where it's kind of set up to look like it's modular, when I believe, let's turn our headlamps on, I believe that you can tell where the color change and stuff is, that it's still one ship. It's not like it's held together with merge blocks or anything, but it's kind of designed to look that way, that you've got this kind of pod circle shape, then with another pod above that, and then you've got these scaffolding thing, or not scaffolding, but kind of brace areas that are made to look like it's holding it together. We've got like these thruster pods over here, and I think the most obvious example would be the front with this I hesitate to say armor plate. It's more like an armor cover that's put over top of the hull, or at least made to look that way. It gives it a bit more of that, probably closer to like a Gundam or an Alien style, as opposed to something that you might see in, say, I don't know, like Star Wars or Star Trek, that go a little bit more sci-fi and streamlined. This one has a bit more of an industrial, like I said, realistic kind of design to it. But again, it's mostly done from these hull sections, which aren't really complicated. I do like this nose area, though. I'd like to pick this apart for a minute, because typically in the past I've seen a lot of these designs done with mods that used different kinds of ramps and things to make up for the vanilla. This one's actually done in vanilla, though, which makes things really interesting. So we're looking at this is probably your closest to a base point. So we have some solid blocks, just a 2x1 ramp, and then more blocks. It looks like the nose, or the tips. Yeah, so we've got armor 2x1 tips on the bottom that then kind of blend into the other armor under here. And then up on the nose, it looks like we've got 2x1 ramps and blocks behind that, ramp, 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 and then it stops at a base. Now this part is interesting and very creative in my point of view. So it stops at a base and then does a vertical base going this way, or actually no, it's a vertical 2x1 ramp to get the verticality going, and then it goes to an opposite 2x1 tip with half slopes, or half blocks, excuse me, all the way across. And then on the inside, they're using a 1x1 slope with a 2x1 base, and then a half slope section, which is pretty cool. Now this part in here, in my opinion, gets a little dicey, but there's also kind of a not really much better way you're gonna do it kind of situation as well. But it goes into 2x1 inverted, or regular corners and inverted corners back here, and then there's kind of this little lip, and it looks like an inverted corner on the back here, but I can't quite seem to get close enough to see what it is. Oh, yep. I think that's an inverted corner. I'm not sure. Either that or it's a standard, but I think it's inverted. So yeah, that's pretty cool overall to pull that off in vanilla. That's usually very difficult to do without mods. So hats off there. And then we've got this cool hull kind of shape, or bow is probably more accurate, that starts with the 2x1 corner and inverted corner, and kind of just walks it down to an edge, and then it just kind of squares off and moves to an inset edge over here, and it kind of runs around here and then comes back out to, this is a part of old ships, and I can't remember what they're called. I know this is the keel, or I think that's the keel anyway, but this part where you get this, like, here's the bow and then it sticks out with a point, or a circular shape kind of thing. It was on old colonial, like, sailing ships and things, but I can't ever remember the name of it. But it looks like they're replicating that here, which is pretty cool. It's a nice little touch, keeping it kind of the old school ship design. I do really like the use of colors here. They're making a really good use of accent colors and stuff, and base colors to give you some varying depth without actually having to do too much in the actual build. For example, we've got the outer part here in the light gray that then makes the darker hull areas kind of stand out. And down here along the keel, I'm calling it the keel anyway, we've got this black line, but then it's separated by the gray pods off to the side, which that's a nice little touch. I like that. Plus you've got the cool color stripes that, again, the structure doesn't change or anything. It doesn't really, you know, they're the same blocks. This is the same shape as it is up here, but throwing a gray stripe down the center that's slightly different colors, it just gives it a little bit more variety and life to it. So that's really cool. I am really liking this style too. I'm seeing this a lot, and I'm sure you guys have noticed how often I pointed out in the reverse engineer reverse engineer series, is the use of 2x1 sections with half blocks, or vice versa, using half blocks on the side like this. I actually had it backwards. So this is a base, and then this is the full block, and then the rest of this is half block, which gives kind of an interesting illusion that it kind of looks the same as if you had standard block and then the 2x1 tip and half blocks this way. It would look the same, but it allowed them to do this over here because this is all part of this area, which is using the half blocks. It also is a cool way to inset the thrusters down a little bit. So they put a half block here with the 2x1 tips around the outside, so it gives a slope on the outside, and it gives these a bit more depth, like they're sunk into the ship, without it being a full block high, which makes it look a little bit like it's sticking too far out. I also like this. We've got 2x1 ramp tips on the side, an empty space, half blocks all around, and then half slopes. This is a cool way to, again, make this kind of groove inset shape kind of thing. This is pretty neat. So that's a nice little trick. You could even use... this adds a little bit more depth. It gives it a bit more of a greeble look, actually, but you could use standard blocks or even the horizontal windows that have the little slats in them. You could even use that to make it look more like an air vent or something if you wanted to. But it's still cool. I like looking for little tricks that you don't have to redesign your entire ship, but that you can just add here and there, and it just gives it a little bit more depth. Like this kind of stuff is cool, but you kind of have to plan it this way. You'd have to kind of have an idea of, I want this to look like that. Doing it that way where it's like, I've got full blocks here, but they're a little big, and just cutting them out and putting the half ones there is really cool. It's a nice little touch. I really need to get used to using half blocks. I don't use them enough in my own builds. And I'm finding through the inspiration and reverse engineers that they're very useful. But yeah, and then there's this kind of thing too. I again have seen this many times, but have yet to really implement it correctly in my own builds, is if you have a section like this where you could put the corner blocks on top of the inverted corner blocks and just make a smoothed area, you can actually set them one back or one down, in this case both, and it gives it kind of the same shape but offset a little bit, so it can create a different kind of shape, which is pretty cool. This is another interesting little technique. Now personally, in my experience, oh, I thought the mag boots would actually work for me there. In my experience, I have a terribly difficult time working with a combination of 2x1 ramps and the regular 1x1 angles. Using one or the other, I'm pretty okay with, but when I try and combine them both, I have a terrible time getting things to blend. So this is actually a pretty cool example of one way you could do it. You can see here we start with a 1x1 slope, and then move with the corner and inverted corners up to the side, but when we get here, instead of just throwing a regular corner there, they actually used a 2x1 corner and then one on top to give it a bit more of a pointed shape. You can also do stuff like this, where when you get to the edge, you can go straight down with ramps and things like that to give it a bit more verticality to the angle, which is pretty cool. Let's see, what else? I do like this shape too. I've been seeing a lot of back-to-back base and the ramp tips and stuff like that to create these kind of little archways or little bevels. In this case, it's a bit more of a housing for the thruster, but I do like this this technique I've been seeing a lot lately of doing the 2x1 ramps out to an edge and then a vertical 2x1 ramp, and it gives kind of like a bit of a fang shape, actually. And I really like that. I think that's pretty cool. I like, again, the use of the half slope blocks to give it a little bit more depth rather than it just being a bar going across. It allows it to have a little bit of an inset here before it forms a ridge. It also makes the ridge not look like it stands out as much, which is pretty useful at times. Again, these half slopes are really cool for bridging these gaps, and again, I really need to learn how to use them more in my own builds. I could definitely learn a lesson from that, but doing the ramps, and then instead of going to a tip and then trying to do another tip and another ramp, that might be spaced incorrectly, throwing a half slope in the middle to bridge the two is a really cool trick. It's very, very useful. So yeah, that's all pretty cool. I like the wings here too. This is a nice little added touch that doesn't really need to be there, but it really adds a lot of style to it. And again, we're coming off of a 2x1 ramp, going to a 1x1 slope, and just kind of walking it down. And then this is a nice little touch too. They added a 2x1 tip at the end to round off the edge, but then it also kind of flattens out and meets this other shape here from the 1x1 slope. So that's pretty cool. Again, I like to use the little vents and stuff like that, or using a base ramp with the lights here. It gives a little bit more texture and detail. It's not just a flat wing then. At that point, it looks like it might have a vent, or you got these little bumps and things like that. I like this is a 1x1 that goes into a base and then back out the other way. That's a nice little way to do a pretty decent curve. Curves are always a struggle in Space Engineers, but that's a pretty cool way to pull that one off. I do have to admit I like this kind of inset shape for thrusters a little bit more than the standard circle of a 1x1 slope, an inverted corner, a slope, an inverted corner, and walking around. I like using these 2x1 versions, it gives it a bit more of almost like a hexagon kind of shape rather than a circle. When you use the 1x1s, it tends to be much more circular, and I like this kind of hexagonal style almost. And I really like the touch of adding a border around the thrusters, so very few, if any, of the thrusters are sticking out. Now, I do think this may be a problem if you're playing with thruster damage, this right here where there's something in front of it. These ion ones, though, would work perfectly fine as far as I understand it. I could be wrong about the hydrogen ones, they may work as well. But I do like that from a distance or something, it's like you don't see any of the wiring of the thrusters, all these little pipes and grooves and things like that. It's more concealed. I really, really like that. I love when builders put housings in the thrusters or around them. I think it's a very, very nice touch. Let's see. I don't think there's really a whole lot else on the outside that I wanted to point out, so we're probably going to go ahead and take a peek on the interior and see if there's anything worth noting. I think it's pretty safe to say this ship was designed with thruster damage being off in mind. Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought that was a hole in the floor or something, but I guess that is actually, but this one, I mean, there may be an opening enough there for it to not damage anything, but it looks pretty well facing a block. Although this is the inverted corner stuff, so maybe not. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I walked over, and from here it just kind of looked like it was up against the floor, and it was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. But overall, the interior works pretty well for this ship. It's a little more tightly packed than I probably would prefer, but that's probably just a ship profile size issue more than anything else. But I can't say that there's anything that really stood out to me that we haven't typically seen very often before, or that was typically like super crazy unique. I do like the little fighters though. These are pretty cool. Again, using little ramps to just make kind of wing shapes that most don't do. I also like the guns being up here. I tend to put mine out on the nose, but I kind of like the Gatling guns being up top on the shoulders. So I do like the fighter designs. Those are pretty cool. As far as the interior, though, it works. It's got, again, with all the pipes exposed and stuff, it does have a more industrial feel or realistic kind of thing. It definitely doesn't have like a super sleek sci-fi style where like everything is behind some kind of glass panel or something. The one area that I did find to be kind of cool, I thought would be kind of... I do like the scaffolding look here of doing the half blocks and half 2x1 bases, and then not completing them to give it kind of a scaffolding kind of look. I do like that. There's also, in one of the engineering sections, there was some pillars I thought were pretty interesting. Maybe it was main engineering. Yes. So again, you have like standard block size things and then half blocks with a 2x1 base going up, and it kind of gave this cool curved pillar shape, which is kind of cool. The only thing that I don't like about using the half blocks for the pillars instead of using the half blocks on the wall and then having full blocks is that if you wanted to, you couldn't put like a light or something on this. It would have to go above it, like, well, basically like they have it here. Though, I have to admit, I do like the placement of the interior lights on a 2x1 base, because you still get a bit of that slope, and the light isn't like way out and floating in space or something like that. It still kind of looks like it's attached to the flat edge. So that's a cool little trick. I do like that. But I think the other one was in the lower engineering. If I can figure out where that was. Again, I'm missing a door somewhere. Maybe down here? Maybe it was this way. Ah, here it is. I like this, too. This is going to sound really weird, but this room right here, where we've got this, the oxygen tanks on the side, some vents over here, this really reminds me of a Halo 2 map. Why? Don't know. Just does. I really can't think of why. It kind of reminds me, it's the map where there's you're inside and it's like a cargo conveyor thing or something like that. That's what I'm thinking of. But I don't know why it reminds me of that. But I like this glass panel here. This reminds me of Star Trek, where they would like be standing on one side of the glass in the engineering room and the reactor was on the other side, or the warp core. Excuse me. So yeah, that's kind of cool. But other than that, I didn't see anything that stood out as too drastically different from some other stuff that we've already kind of noted. I do kind of like this, though. This is a nice little touch, using the 2x1s in reverse direction and creating kind of an archway. That's kind of cool. I never thought to do that. It actually makes me wonder if you could do the same thing, but then on the opposite side to create kind of a ribbed corridor kind of thing, where it would kind of look like a rib cage, or just an archway kind of thing, something like that. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for this build. So what I'd like to do is move to the ones that I was going to pick for the Inspiration series episode, but didn't, and then let you guys cast your votes on the poll or whatever for what's going to be reverse engineered next time. Alrighty, so here we have them, and going from right to left, we have the Europa-class carrier, the IEC, and Angelius Portum Deep Space Starbase, I think that's what it's called, and the USSP Moskva. Sure, that's what I'm going with. So yeah. These were all some pretty cool builds, though. This one in the middle, is as the name implies, it is a base, so it's a little bit hard to compare the two. I liked this one because it was kind of like the Moskva, because it was kind of like it reminded me of a helicarrier from Avengers, but it was really well done. It really has some cool detail work on it. The base is cool. I haven't gone through the interiors or any of these, but the base was pretty interesting looking, and it had a lot of different bits and bobs kind of thing, and definitely unique, because it's kind of almost like a sort of Deep Space Nine donut type thing without the middle section kind of thing. It's like the outer ring without the middle. But I guess it is supposed to be more of like a hangar base, so it makes sense that you can fly through the center. It actually reminds me of the base off of Rogue One that's actually like got the shield portal in the middle of it. But this one I actually picked more from a technical standpoint, that it talks about having an airtight hangar, and as for those of you that recall, in my current Let's Build, I've been having that issue of the hangar being large enough. How do I keep it sealed? So I'm kind of seeing it so far from the edge. It's using some kind of piston merge block combination thing, but it's really interesting that somebody finally did like a more than the airtight hangar doors could handle, but still kept an airtight hangar. So I'm definitely curious about that one. So definitely leave your votes in the poll as to which one you guys would prefer to see in the next episode of the Reverse Engineers series. Again, I appreciate you guys sticking with me through some of the wonky schedule routine kind of stuff, but it was just because of the special episode for the Inspiration series kind of threw off the typical. Within a couple episodes, though, I hope to be back to the regular routine of the poll being in the Inspiration series episode. But if you guys like this better, then let me know. If you prefer to do it this way, then let me know which way you guys would prefer it, and maybe we'll keep this kind of a permanent change, who knows. But with that, we're going to wrap things up here for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.